Hello and welcome to this Schritte in die Finsternis, or to say in English, Steps into Darkness tutorial for the Necron of the new Warhammer 40,000 9th Edition. Just a small advice to my German-speaking audience. Ein kleiner Hinweis an die deutschsprachigen Zuschauer. Ihr habt die Möglichkeit, ein extra deutsch vertontes Video anzuschauen in der Videobeschreibung unter dem Link German Overdub. Und dort könnt ihr auch am Gewinnspiel dieser Miniserie teilnehmen. Also switcht einfach rüber und nehmt teil. Zurück zum Englischen. Back to English! I want to accomplish with this tutorial an unusual color scheme for Necrons. Mostly you see these silverish, brassish or goldish metal colors with a green glow. And I want to go a different route with a complementary contrast and decided to go with this blue-orange contrast, and that is the main thing that's going on in this color scheme. The bluish armor panels with this striking orange effects, and I hope you like what you see and want to follow me in the steps. The colors I used are shown in the left upper corner, and as you may have recognized, I'm not a native English speaking person, so I hope you could forgive me some mispronunciation and stuff like this. I start with a just built miniature. Some mold lines need to be removed, and I based it with a little bit of grit and glue and added a Citadel skull to give the base more of a variation. First step is Citadel Chaos Black spray all over the miniature, and this would be a nice coat for the skeleton parts of this miniature, because they need to be black in the end. The first thing I do is a heavy dry brush with Corvus Black. This is a nearly black gray, and I dry brush it all over the miniature from above, below, right, left, and all around. Dry brushing, you took a little bit of paint onto a paper towel, wipe the most excess paint off the brush, and then go in a very narrow angle around all the miniature to hit all these surfaces. The heavier the dry brush is, the more of the surfaces you hit, and you can go to build up a little bit of highlighting before the real painting process just starts. Next step, dry brushing with Ashen Gray, my favorite base gray color, and I use it in a similar manner than Corvus Black, but here I dry brush from above, right and left. Don't use the up motion to hit the lower highlights. This step is accomplished then with Dawnstone, and this is maybe nearly a final highlight for the skeleton parts. I dry brush mostly from above, and this is on the most blackened parts the final highlight. We just refined the highlights in the further parts, but this is where it works, that we primed in black and worked the skeleton parts over the dry brushing process. And you get a feeling where all the light would hit and where the color that would be applied now could be brighter if you want to modulate the color a little bit more than I do in this tutorial. Next step, the armor panels on all the Necron miniature with Grey Knight Steel. This is a bluish silver color and is most what we do with these armor panels. There will only be a little bit of glazing and then highlighting on the edges. But this is most what we do here. It's important to apply 2 coats of this color because it's a little bit opaque, and we want to get a striking, easy color scheme that even beginners can accomplish to work out. So 2 coats on all the armor panels that are on the miniature, and then we go to the next step of glazing, cause when I painted all these metal parts, I think, oh, they are a little bit bright. So I take Drakenhof Nightshade mixed with Lamihan Medium 50-50 mix and applied it like a glaze on all these metal parts to get the color transition a bit more to a bluish tone, and the shade or glaze would catch all these damaged parts of the armor where it dries out darker, so you get just a little bit of color variation and shading. This is done all over the miniature in a thin coat. Just keep in mind that the color don't pool on all these surfaces, cause this would look ugly later. And if you work just a bit focused than maybe usual, you can save a lot of work time later to clean up all the overspill. If you get these glaze on the black parts, it doesn't matter really much, cause it's black, and when it's a little bit more of a bluish black, there is maybe not even the opportunity to see the difference. Next step, after all these glazing parts have dried, ashen gray for these cables that are in the abdomen and on the weapons, and maybe on the skull when there's some cables or tubes coming out there. This is just to add another color, but don't get a color that's striking and would irritate the viewer. We just work out these complementary contrast as the main twist of this color scheme, so these are just some tiny color variations. Next step is Dawnstone for the final highlight on these skeleton pieces and on the armor. I just apply these edge highlights in small dots and just really short lines. It's important to break up these lines, don't paint straight lines, to give this illusion of a roughed up warrior that's in service for eons and get a little bit of damage on all these surfaces. On the weapon and some of these metal bones, I paint small lines from the edge into the surface to give the irritation, the image of some scratching and some battle damage, and you can see it after the step on the weapon for the most part, because the weapon is the piece of the model that has the most flat surfaces where I could use this technique the most efficient. And as you see, less is more. You don't need to highlight all parts, just here and there, to give the illusion of a reflective surface. After all this is done, you're ready to go for the second metal color. This one is Balthasar Gold, and I paint this one over this Necron emblem on the chest piece. There is a blackened part in the center of the chest, and there is the Necron symbol that would be gold. Also, I paint these small cables and internal things that are here and there on the miniature, and these energy core thing, whatever it is, on the weapon, to give the viewer the pleasure of some different colors on the miniature. And there are maybe some other miniatures in the range that got runic plate armor here and there. You could use the Balthasar Gold also there, as you may have seen in the intro on the other models. There are many parts where you can apply an additional metal color. Fun fact, these goldish brassy metals go a little bit into the complementary scheme, cause it's just kinda yellowish, and if you go to the complementary colors, blue got the complementary color of orange and violet of yellow, and cause this golden color is just in between of yellow and orange, it would fit into the color scheme. Next thing goldish parts highlight with Rune Lord Brass, just the upper part of the Necron symbol, and the furthest parts on these cables that are furthest away from the armor panels. And if you can see it here, it's just a little bit out of focus, and I want to apologize for this, because it's really hard, I think, to paint with the camera in front of my face. And if I focus on the miniature, I don't always look on the display of my cam, and I went out of the natural focus of the camera sometimes from here, so my apologies, but I think you can follow the steps. Like this one, edge highlighting on all these bluish metal armor with Rune Fang steel. Just like the Black Skeleton, I use dots and small lines to get an edge highlight down here. And this one, with this really striking silver on this little bit darkened bluish metal, just give a vibe of an alien surface and fit right into the narrative of these necrodermis, these self-healing metal that the Necrontyr and later the Necron use, and I think it fits nicely. I just paint these edge highlights where the light would strike, so on the leg just beneath the hand where there would be shadow, there is no need for these edge highlights, so you can cut corners here. Just keep in mind to paint the color on focused and don't mess up the paint, so you don't have to clean up any parts later and save time this way. After the main parts of the miniatures are done like this, there is time for the magic to be produced. Let the magic happen, and we use Trollslayer Orange for all these parts that want to be orange glow parts, and apply this into the eye sockets, into these rivets on the breastplate, on the tubes, on the weapon, and on all these elements that are glowy, that are on the weapon's front part. Just apply it in 2 coats. If you spill over a little bit, it's not too big of a thing, because we apply a glow effect later. But if you apply this color by accident on any surface, just wipe it off with your finger real quick and you're good to go. Here is the part where you can flip the miniature sideways or just on its head to get the real good angle to reach all these little parts that needs to be glowy, and don't mess up the paint job that you've done right now. Keep in mind that there are sometimes some canoptic scarabs on these warriors that need to be painted with this color also, and they can come out of the abdomen, be on the legs or on the back part. Now I take Fire Dragon Pride and get a tiny amount of edge highlighting around all these parts where there would be just a bit of glow, so that these little bit of light reflects on the edges around these glowing pieces. Nothing special here, just apply it here and there. And then use a Fire Dragon Bright to paint all these shiny parts, like the tube, the centerpiece of these weapon ball thingies, and the eyes and the surrounding areas with Fire Dragon Bright. Keep your time, don't mess up, and if you think you have messed up, wipe off the color real quick and try it again. There is no magic, just a little bit of practice and steady hands to be involved here. after you applied all these shiny, kinda OSL edge highlights, we want to get these orange bits just a little bit more of the striking scheme, and I take Uriel Yellow, paint the eye lenses as the brightest part of the eye, paint these globule things in the weapon on the left upper side, and apply some Uriel Yellow on these orange tubes on the weapon, where the tube go into the weapon on the left and right side. And also you can apply some of these Uriel Yellow on some of the edges around these glowing parts to give it a bit of more striking appearance, like I show here. As I mentioned before, steady hands, a little bit of practice, no magic involved here. And then after this one, there is an additional step you can take if you want to get these elements more of a popping effect. You could use white scar and add the final highlight or glowy bits. There is on these globule thing in the weapon on the left uppermost corner just a small dot, so that it looks like a shiny object, and just a small line on the tube where it could reflect the color the most, so that the surface looks like not these roughed up metal pieces of the weapon, the skeleton and the armor, so instead of a more smooth surface that reflects the light. Even that this tube glows itself, it reflects the light, and this, I think, is the most alien a surface could be. There is nothing left to do on the miniature, so we go to the base. I paint all this base in Keteshan Fleshtone, dry brush it with Steel Legion Drab, paint the skull in Steel Legion Drab, highlight the skull as I done before on the miniature with Karak Stone, give it a little bit of glaze with Seraphim Sepia Lamy and medium 50-50 mix, and then we are back with a grass tuft by Army Painter that would be applied on the base for variation. Just some super glue on the base, then press the tuft down with a pair of tweezers and you're good to go. If you want to go the extra step with pigments, as I have done, give the base just enough time to dry, cause these glazing colors and great splodges of super glue need to dry really long time, as I have found out. And then I use Vallejo pigments, or you can use AK Interactive or whatever. In this case, burnt umber, a special dry brush. Put these pigments on the brush, tiny amount, this pigment powder, and stipple it on the base. And as you can see here, it's a dusty appearance and fit nicely to the color we lay down on base. And you can stipple it on the feet of the Necron to give it the appearance that it walks through this dusty surface and some of this dust settled down on the legs while he walks there. After you've done the whole base this way, there is only one step: fixing the pigments with pigment binder or matte varnish, a great thick coat, so that the pigments don't fall off in the future, and the base trim needs to be painted in Dryad Bark, and you are good to go for your whole army. I hope you liked this tutorial, and maybe you consider to leave a thumbs up. There are some more models in these Warhammer 40k starter sets, some models like Spezmarines, and the next video I want to show you are Imperial Fist Spezmarines Assault Intercessor, with a technique where you don't need to apply color like through the airbrush or stuff. Very simple. Just keep tuned to my channel and wait for the next Schritt in die Finsternis, Step to Darkness tutorial. Thank you and keep on wargaming!